This does not work. It has never worked. There is really no such thing as an unalienable right outside of the culture which it is assumed. We are making this up. Therefore, liberties need to be inherent in the social system by design, not alluded to ambiguously on paper. As a classic example of this, let's take the notion of divine law, the famed 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not murder. Why? These are surface notion cop-outs created by men who didn't have any real information, who did not understand that we live in a cause and effect reality. Telling people this does virtually nothing, as history has proven. Morality is an empty idea that has no empirical referent. An intelligent commandment would be something like, thou shalt continually reorient thyself and society to reduce reactionary propensities that lead to aberrated consequences such as stealing and murder.
That would be a genuine statement.
The same surface irrelevancy applies to any constitution or Bill of Rights of any country on this planet. In the Bill of Rights of the United States, there is an attempt to secure certain freedoms and protections by way, again, of mere text on paper. Now, while I understand the value of this document and the temporal brilliance of it in the context of the period of its creation, that does not excuse the fact that it is a product of social inefficiency and nothing more. In other words, declarations of laws and rights are actually an acknowledgement of failures of the social design. There are many people today in the so-called patriot and liberty movements. I know many people like this. I'm a fan of many people who are proponents of this, in part because I think there's a place for it. But this document is not the savior of America. Some people seem to believe that the United States had some magical position at one point or another, perhaps where we slaughtered all the Mexicans and Indians to steal the land, or the fact that when the Constitution was written, only white property-owning males, which is about 10% of the whole population of the nation, could actually vote. This is government by the people? Moving on, let me demonstrate what I'm talking about here. The Fourth Amendment details how people have protection from unreasonable searches and seizures. This statement is basically qualified by the termed notion of probable cause in the amendment. What is probable cause? The only way to figure this out is to find a legal working definition that is culturally accepted. A common definition of probable cause in this context is a reasonable belief that a person has committed a crime. Okay, so the qualifier is now reasonable, right? Reasonable, okay, this is often defined as fair, not excessive or extreme. Well, okay, then I guess we have to move on to the word excessive. You see my point, I hope. It is meaningless semantically, therefore it cannot be trusted. None of them can. In other words, legal definitions are not empirical. All the amendments are subject to the whims of interpretation, which is why they are abused by the police, Homeland Security, and the IRS on a daily basis. Therefore, back to my original point, there is no such thing as rights, as the reference can be altered at will. The Fourth Amendment is an attempt to protect people from state power abuse. That is clear, but it avoids the real issue, and that is, why would the state have an interest to search and seize to begin with? How do you remove the mechanisms that generate such behavior? We need to focus on the real cause. Now, to be clear again, I'm not saying that laws, rights, and the like are not needed at this time. They certainly are. But we need to hone our focus to resolving the actual problem. And by the way, for all the nationalists out there, I am not attacking the U.S. Constitution once again. However, it is not the answer, and it's naive to think that this document really has that much relevance. Again, I am a fan of people like Ron Paul and Dennis Kucinich. I believe there's a place for the work that they do, but it's not the answer. The history of America is just like the history of any other country on this planet. It is a history of deception, fraud, and corruption. There is nothing to return to, for the integrity was never there to begin with. We must move forward, not backwards. And this brings us to government. All governments in existence today, whether you recognize it or not, are institutional dictatorships. They are publicly sanctioned power monopolies. And democracy as it is practiced today is simply a game that is played, I'm sorry, but it's simply a game that's played to give the public the illusion of control. People think they have choice in our current system because they can press a button on a voting machine and put a pre-selected person into power. However, once that person is in power, the public then has virtually no say. Did you vote for the bank bailout?
No.
Did you vote for the cabinet of a new president? Did you vote for the tax increase? Do you vote for where highways or power grids or any infrastructure goes? Did you vote for the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq?
No, you didn't.
So where is your real participation? In part 3, we will discuss how a true democracy actually would work, and it's not the election of people, it's the election of ideas. We have to understand that government as we know it today is not in place for the well-being of the public, but rather for the perpetuation of their establishment and their power, just like every other institution within a monetary system. Government is a monetary invention for the sake of economic and social control, and its methods are based on self-preservation first and foremost. All the government can really do is create laws to compensate for an inherent lack of integrity in the social order. It's also worth pointing out that most politicians, in fact, are lawyers. Most players in government come from the world of law. And in reality, they have absolutely no real education, therefore, or understanding about the true foundation of social operation. Can a lawyer come fix your home heating system? Can a lawyer go and organize a power grid for a particular area? No. Lawyers and hence politicians are simply not trained in any tangible way to solve real problems. They're trained to solve artificial, nonsensical problems that are culminated byproducts of our nonsensical society. In other words, society is in fact a technical creation. I'll say that again. Society is a technical creation consisting of infrastructure, resources, and management. Society is a technological construct. Republican, Democrat, it doesn't mean a damn thing. If you really want to see a society that works, you have to begin to realize that science and technology is the overarching element that governs the entire mechanism of social organization. And therefore, those who study those attributes should be given not control, but should be given the forefront of participation, forefront of influence to say, hey, we can feed and clothe all the impoverished people in Africa and in the third world. We could technically do it. But unfortunately, they go to their corporate bureaucracy and hence government bureaucracy. And of course, the governments say, oh, we don't have the money for that. The question has never been, do we have the money? The question has always been, do we have the resources and technological know-how? Now, the final issue I would like to cover in this section has to do with activism and the traditional patterns of activism we have seen historically across the world. In the world today, there are countless well-intentioned people and activist organizations making a lot of noise about the rampant problems and injustices in our world. Yet, unfortunately, as you tend to find, very few offer any real tangible long-term solutions. Those that do offer solutions, however, almost universally frame those solutions within the pre-existing social establishment. Their tactics tend to involve new legislation, and of course, they always demand ethics and accountability. Very little regard is given to the root structure of our system. Battling and protesting corporate organizations, corrupt corporate organizations, and seeking money from society in an attempt to curtail such trends is a typical path that is taken. It is a very respectable path in general. However, it is not going to create long-term change. I'm nothing but pleased to see something like this, but does that really do anything? When it comes to social corruption, poverty, environmental disregard, human exploitation, and most personal and social turmoil in the world today, the great realization is that most of these problems are not the result of a particular company, some nefarious elite group, or some government legislation. These are symptoms of the foundational problem. The real issue is human behavior, and human behavior is largely created and reinforced by the social patterns required for survival as necessitated by the social system of that period in time. We are products of our society. And the fact of the matter is, it is the very foundation of our socioeconomic system and hence our environmental condition which has created the sick cultural climate you see around you. Very rarely do any activist organizations today consider the possibility that maybe it is the social system itself that is the problem. The bottom line is that we can spend the rest of our existences attempting to stomp on the ants that mysteriously wander out from underneath our refrigerator, setting traps or laws, or we can get rid of the spoiled food behind it, which is causing the infestation to begin with.